well. But we have a number of different ways we kind of use our product, and hopefully they can share a bit more about their day-to-day engineering work. And just to touch a little bit on our culture, we're kind of a nice blend of startup mentality and established company. We're not new to the game by any means. We've been around for a while. So, BombBomb has kind of the fun challenges of taking on challenges collaboratively and creatively, but, an established and stable company that's growing. Big area of emphasis for us is professional development. So really helping people grow in their time here is something that I'm really proud of that we take on. And it's really fun. Our engineers hopefully have a lot of fun at work and work very collaboratively with product managers, designers, QA, kind of everybody's involved in the process there. So we are hiring. If you want to connect with me, please do so. Would love to talk more about BombBomb, but really want to kick it over to our team here to share more about how they got into coding, kind of what they do, and hopefully that is of benefit to everyone. So I'll pass it over to Liz Asbell as our first speaker from the team.
Thanks, Matt. Excuse me. Yeah, so as Matt said, my name is Elizabeth Asbell, Liz Asbell, software engineer here at BombBomb. I'm currently on what we call the browser team. That name originated from back in the day when the primary focus was on the browser extensions. Since then, we've kind of grown into touching all aspects of the product. Our most recent kind of project that we're working on is we're migrating our login service from a homegrown operation over to Auth0. So that's been fun to work on. But my path to coding, my first interaction with code, maybe like a lot of people, was messing with my MySpace page back in the day. I never really considered computer science or programming on in a serious level. I just don't think it was promoted back then in general, and especially to young girls. So it wasn't even on my radar. I moved from Maine to Salt Lake City for college, where I got a degree in environmental studies. After college, I moved to Denver, where I got a job related to my degree. I was in environmental consulting, going around to large construction projects all around Colorado, where I would do inspections for stormwater compliance. I realized, I wasn't being challenged intellectually. I also really didn't like working on construction sites. I was just generally very unhappy. I wish I remembered what initially sparked me getting into coding. I can't, but I do know I bought a Udemy course, if anyone's been on there, and I bought a full stack development course and just started teaching myself, the basics of programming, and I loved it. Started going to some beginner meetups around Denver and decided I wanted to pursue it further. So a lot of engineers, are self-taught and go on to have great careers. I knew for me, I needed a structured program. So I started doing a bunch of research on, boot camps, and landed on Turing School of Software and Design, if anyone's familiar. I went back when they were in person in Denver, downtown Denver. It's a 7-month intensive program. And I committed. I quit my job, took a few months off to travel around South America and continuing to teach myself how to code, and finally started Turing in fall of 2018. It's a 7-month program full time, so it's intense. You're spending about 60 to 70 hours a week studying programming and doing projects, but I loved it. I knew it was the right decision for me. That specific school, you can decide between a front-end focus and a back-end focus. So I did front-end, so a lot of JavaScript and React, and that was my life for 7 months. Luckily, I got my first job out of school fairly quickly. I was working at a government tech company in downtown Denver called Granicus. Moved on to a startup called Fixed Repair. Finally found BombBomb. I've been here for about 1.5 years. I love it. Even though my studies were really focused on the front end, I've been able to work across the stack, which has been great. So a lot of continued learning. And yeah, if anyone has questions on just the process of learning to code or Turing or BombBomb or anything else, I would love to chat. I can put my LinkedIn profile in the chat for everyone. Thank you. I think I'm passing to Mel.
Yeah, hi. I'm Mel Pike. I am a junior software engineer at BombBomb. I am on the money and growth team, although I think we're like in the process of changing the team name, so I don't really know. It's money and growth. I think that's good enough. So my path actually is like 90% was while I was employed at BombBomb. So I graduated with a graphic design degree, and I did that for about 5 years after graduation. I got hired onto BombBomb as an email designer. And while I was doing that work, like I already had some basic HTML and CSS experience. So while I was working doing email design, I had the opportunity to kind of work on a couple of projects that, you know, did more and more coding, and it was really exciting and challenging. And so I kind of, you know, kept digging deeper. It was a lot of, you know, doing courses online, kind of like Liz was saying, just in my free time. And I eventually got the opportunity to move over to another department to do front-end development. And I was doing that for about a year. And then that role got moved into engineering. And so that's where I kind of finally got over to engineering. But yeah, I mean, just having the experience of being able to work and learn at the same time has been really incredible. And just, you know, having the opportunity at BombBomb has been really great. All of our engineers are super smart, and they're also really friendly, and they're also very generous with their time and their knowledge. So that's something that I was really able to take advantage of, you know, during this whole process. Yeah, I think that's about it. I'm gonna pass it on over to Sharon.
Hey, thank you. Yeah, my name is Sharon. I have been with BombBomb since December on the security team. I'm a software developer. I actually come from a developer family. My stepfather is a software engineer, and my mom is a DBA, so very computer-oriented family. And I always really liked computers, but every time my parents would say, well, you need to get into coding, it'll be great. And I was always really intimidated by the fact that I didn't like math at all. And I'd always been told, oh, you need to like math. You need to have like this very programmatic brain or whatever. And I just didn't. So I was like, well, let's not do that. So I went actually into linguistics in the military, not realizing that like languages is so translatable to code. So I went into languages in the military, and then I actually got into coding, doing some code for an online game that I play. And I was like, oh, well, actually, I really like this. There's very little math. And then from there, I went to go get my associate's degree. I didn't actually go to much school. I just got my associate's. In my final year of getting it, I got an internship at another company in Colorado Springs called Bold Technologies. And through there, I had my first real experience with like coding professionally. And I was there for about 7 years, learning just everything full stack. And then, yeah, this December, I switched over to BombBomb just as because like you get kind of like an imposter syndrome, especially working in the same code. You're like, I don't know if I actually know how to code versus I know this code. So I reached out of my comfort zone, came to BombBomb, and yeah, really liking it here. So, and I am passing it over to Jade.
Thanks, Sharon. Hi, everybody. I'm Jade Lopez. I've been working with BombBomb since the beginning of August. Really, really love my team. I work actually with Mel and Erica on the money and growth team as well, which it's a lot of fun just to hang out and be in a department where, and in the tech area where there's more women than men, which in a previous job, I was like the only female. So I'm really enjoying where I'm at right now. So my path actually started with, I was trying to do vocal performance in opera in San Francisco State. I'm originally from SoCal, and I went up to San Francisco to try to make it big in opera, but it's just very expensive and I couldn't finish college. So it was kind of a bummer. I moved back with my parents with my then fiance. We were just saving up to get married, got married, and then I was trying to figure out what to do. So I have always been a very artistic person. So I figured why not do graphic design, because I was originally interested in that. And in the courses, they made you take a web dev course. And I would struggle for hours with that and then doing a JavaScript code. And so my husband, who's also, he's a computer science major, he was like, you sit there for hours trying to figure out like how everything works. And I was frustrated with the little knowledge that I had to make things better. So he's the one that actually kind of pushed me towards looking for either doing a degree or going to a boot camp. So I decided to take the boot camp route. I went with Lambda. I think they just changed their name to Bloom Tech. And it was a 9-month program that was just highly intensive, doing everything from front end, back end, doing projects. And I had a great experience. It was very interactive. We actually got to work with a nonprofit in Africa doing an application for them. So that was really cool, just learning how to do that, work with another customer, fulfill their needs. And that gave me some experience. Right after I graduated Lambda, COVID hit, so I didn't get a job right away, but luckily they had a program set up where they had contacts with different companies. So they contacted a company called Viking Enterprise Solutions. So that was my first job. And I was learning a lot. It's very intense, just like kind of nonstop programming. A lot of imposter syndrome was happening while I was working there. So I was working there for 9 months, and then Patrick McDavid, our CTO, contacted me and just said, we have a position on a great team. Would you be interested? So got to talking with him, great conversation. And I really wanted to, he kind of stressed this idea that the other ladies have talked about it, where you'll have time to actually learn as you're coding and kind of stretch your career and kind of help with that path of, okay, you're here now, where do you want to go later? And that was really important to me because the other place I was working, it was great, but I didn't really have time to kind of like breathe and learn. It was kind of just go, go, go. So I decided, hey, why not try it? I wasn't sure if I was going to, make the interview and get the job, but I ended up making it and I had a great time. While I was in the interview, my first interview, Mel was there listening to me like rattle on and try to impress one of our bosses. And then I got to interview with the whole team and we clicked right away. And that was just a lot of fun. And it kind of relaxed me during the interview. So that was great. I think the best thing about BombBomb is the fact that there's so many women here and they're all great. They're all intelligent and you can ask any of them for help. They're willing to help you. And it's just a great company. So yeah, love it. The next person I'm handing off to is Erica.
Hello, my name is Erica Kirkbride, and I am a senior software engineer with BombBomb. I've been with BombBomb for a bit under a year. I work with Mel and Jade on the money and growth team, and I'm just going to ditto everything they said about how amazing the team is and how great it is to work with a team that's mostly women developers. So my path to coding kind of started back in high school. I've been a software engineer for about 15 years. At the time when I was in high school, though, I wasn't really coding wasn't on my radar. It was intimidating to me. A few people maybe mentioned it to me and I was just like, no. I kind of wanted to be a veterinarian or a math teacher because I actually really liked math and I was excelling at it. I specifically loved the problem solving and logical aspect of it. It was always just, it was right or wrong, I really liked it. So my math teachers at the time, they encouraged me to check out engineering as an option when I was considering colleges after high school. And I wasn't too sure about it, but then over time, a few of my other role models in my life, like parents, etc., mentioned engineering to me again and again and again. So I decided, oh, all right, fine, I'll give it a shot. So after high school, I started college with an undeclared engineering major at the University of Colorado. And I sort of just took my time taking courses in a few different engineering fields, like electrical engineering, mechanical, architecture, computer science. They were pretty interesting to me, but what really got to me was the coding itself and the computer science courses. So I think what I ended up loving about it was that it had that problem solving and logic and whatnot that I knew I enjoyed. I ended up taking like all the programming language courses that they offered because I was just enjoying it so much. Like I would take the summer courses or late evening courses, just so I could just take all these programming classes. So I declared my major in computer engineering and finished my bachelor's degree in 2007 in computer engineering. Straight away after that, I went into getting my master's degree in computer science. And right when I started my master's degree, I got a position as a software engineer at a research lab at the college. This was pretty huge to me in building my skill sets and my confidence and whatnot. I got some valuable job experience in writing code, software engineering, project management, leadership, just on the job experience and all these places that it was pretty important that I gain confidence in. I finished my master's in 2010. And since then, I've worked in a few different industries as a software engineer. First, after college, I worked in the game development industry. I didn't really develop games. I actually was the software engineer in charge of the website for the game developer conferences. And I got to attend all the game developer conferences. So I learned all about game development without actually building any games. So moved on from there, and I worked with Church Community Builder in the Springs, where I worked on church management systems. So it's basically kind of like social media software, but with more of a hefty focus on schedules and events and attendees. Then after that, I worked in the medical field. I built software that was made to provide assurance that radiation equipment for cancer treatment was working properly. So lots of pressure behind that job. And now I'm at BombBomb. And I do mostly back-end development with some front-end thrown in there too. So that's all for me. I don't know if I should be passing it on back to Matt or who.
I think the idea was that we would open it up to QA.
Yeah,
Oh,
thank you.
Okay. So yeah.
Thank you, everyone. Yeah, you all shared different paths to coding, so it was interesting to hear all of your journey to land at BombBomb. So yeah, so we have now our Q&A session. So if anyone have any questions to anyone or generic question, you can unmute yourself and ask the question. Okay. All right, so Rebecca is asking that several panelists mentioned the ability at BombBomb to learn about and move in between different parts of the stack. How common is that at companies?
I've been at 2 different companies, and my last job, once you get a specialty, like it's so busy that you tended to stay in your code that you needed to work in. So I don't know, like I don't know about other jobs, but it's like kind of night and day versus like here where you can have the opportunity to explore. But it just depends, I imagine, on the structure of the company. I'm sure other people can.
That's been my experience too, Sharon. With past jobs I've had, it feels like they get you really good at something and they kind of silo you.
Yeah.
Stay there, and there's not too much space and flexibility to do other things.
On our team, we actually have, we're starting to implement this more regularly where each of the developers get a hack day. So usually it's, if there's something you're interested on the app or the website and marketing, you get a day where you can kind of just go discover and learn and grow on a certain topic. And our tech lead usually helps to facilitate and come up with different ideas. That's like one of the things that we've been focusing on is like, what are you interested in? How can we help you grow? And let's give you a hack day to just spend all day and kind of do a deeper dive on different topics.
Hack days are fun.
It definitely depends on the structure of the company, I would say. Like if you have a company that's very busy that has to put out a lot of stuff, it's going to be a little bit more siloed.
Thank you. I think Patrick has something to say or ask. Please unmute and ask away.
Thanks for sharing your stories, everyone. Those are really great to hear. I'm curious if anything comes to mind when I ask you about the project or the moment when you sort of felt like you'd arrived, like you'd sort of made it over some of the imposter syndrome fears or anything like that. Like, was there something where you realized you're comfortable now doing software?
For me, it's been recently, our company, we're kind of doing rebranding. And so I've been working with marketing on 3 of the pages that are up now with rebranding. And it's a big project just to do. It doesn't seem like a big project to do 1 page, but there's all these things you have to think about, like the accessibility of the page and whether your code is readable, and then doing JavaScript and making sure that's going to work properly. And then, just the different stages of that. And that was the first time that like I got to do a demo for the company so that they can see what I did, and I recorded something for them. And it kind of felt like, oh man, I really know what I'm doing now, like, and getting feedback from others about how it went, how everything looked. So that was definitely, and that just happened in January. That was kind of my moment of like, okay, I don't have to have imposter syndrome as much because I can see what I'm doing and everybody is giving great feedback.
Jade, the website you built is gorgeous. So I'm gonna +1 that. It was amazing.
Thanks.
I think for me, I definitely have struggled a lot with imposter syndrome. And like my manager says, when I bring it up to him, I don't know if it ever fully goes away. But I think for me, recently, I felt like I've gotten a lot more confident at work, mainly through this Auth0 migration we've been doing. Login services have been, it's a little intimidating, it's very complex, and really having to get in and understand our existing login structure and knowing how to work with the senior engineers on my team to move that over to Auth0 has been a great learning opportunity. And I agree, Jade. I think the demos, so BombBomb, we do 2-week sprints, and at the end of every sprint, we do a big sprint review. It's like 2 hours long. Each team gets to show off their work, and sometimes you get to do a demo to the company, and that I think definitely boosts the confidence and helps chip away at the imposter syndrome at least.
I've definitely had 2 different, like one at BombBomb and one at the company before. Like at BombBomb, I finished up hooking up a microservice to change the security type of video, and ended up writing unit tests, which I hadn't really done at my last job. And getting all of that to work together was definitely like, okay, I guess I can do this job. I'm able to do it.
For me recently, we had another engineer who built a component, and it was kind of like the first time that he had created it, and I was basically like duplicating it. And so I was kind of his guinea pig in this project. And so I kind of had to like take this component and kind of reuse it to the specs that our team's designer had made. I just remember when I was working on it, it was kind of like a big-ish project, and I just remember like not really having to like ask for much help, and I felt like independent. And I think for me that was just like a big thing, just being like junior and not having a formal background. I'm always like, I always feel like I don't know something. So it was a good feeling.
In terms of like what helped me get my first developer job, I know I'm kind of jumping to a question. Contacts really do help. So like coming to these women who code and meeting people is going to really help you. Because I ended up getting my internship through a contact. So
Yeah, I would agree with that. Even if it's like you find a job posting that you're interested in. I know this is kind of what they coached us on at Turing, at least, is find someone on LinkedIn, who works there that maybe you share something in common with, and reach out. Not like, hey, will you give me a referral, but just seeing if they'll meet for 15 minutes to chat over coffee or virtual coffee. Who knows? They might like you and they might give you a referral, which is, I found, the easiest way to. I think the hardest part is just getting the interview in this industry, right? It's like so many applications go ignored, which can suck, but getting your foot in the door helps a lot.
So there's another question from Anne-Marie. What is a typical day like? I think it's BombBomb or as a software engineer.
I kind of had very similar days with BombBomb in my previous company. Like every morning you're going to start out with like a stand up. You're going to tell people what you did the day before and what you're planning on working on today. And, if you have any issues that are like making it hard to do your job, right? Like you can't get a certain amount of code, or you don't have the data or anything like that. And then for me, I work most of the day and then report, the next day. Most of my day is spent coding, and it like researching code is a big portion of that. So you're not like, you don't get in and you start coding the whole time, just looking into the code and figuring out what you're doing, and making plans is a big part of it. And then, if it's a sprint day, you might have a lot more meetings of like looking back through what you've done that sprint and then planning what you're going to do for the next 2 weeks. But yeah, that's a typical day for me. I know a lot of other people have more meetings, but.
Thank you, Sharon. Does anyone have any other different typical day?
I think mine's probably fairly similar. Recently, our team has been having more meetings, not like they're never all the time, which is great. I feel like it's actually a good mix because sometimes it's nice to be able to step away from code for a little while. But we refine our tickets as a team. So that really helps make sure everyone is on the same page with work and making sure we can think through any edge cases prior and knowing what kind of QA time is going to go into things. Another interesting thing that I know my team does this, I'm not sure about other teams, but I have not had this at past jobs, is we have discovery planning, which we have a great UI UX designer on our team. And she does a lot of tests, figuring out what tests can we run in the software to see if a feature is worth pursuing. And I would say, I think 6 months ago, she actually ended up booking a bi-weekly meeting where as a team, we go and look at a problem. So we work in video. So maybe let's say the problem is not enough people are, interacting with the video. we'll take a problem and break it down, and kind of everyone gets a say and maybe ideas they have of what we can do to help address that. And then we'll build out test cases of like what's a really measurable way we can put together a simple test that isn't going to cost a lot of developer hours to see if this is worth pursuing. So that is something I haven't had past jobs. Just each team having the autonomy to kind of decide what they go after, and also making data-driven decisions instead of throwing spaghetti at the wall and hoping it sticks. So yeah.
Thank you. We have another question. Dom wants to know, how did you know you were ready to switch jobs in your careers? Someone answered in the chat too, but if anyone have any thoughts on that, to share with us.
I actually didn't know I was ready to switch. I'd only been at the previous company for like 9 months. So I figured, I need to be here for at least like 2 to 3 years before I can even think about another job. But when Patrick reached out, I was kind of surprised. And I'd been like on LinkedIn, you'll probably, especially when you start working at your first career, you'll start getting a lot of people who are recruiters trying to get you at their jobs. So you talk to them thinking, oh, great, this is maybe another path to a different career path. But a lot of my experience had been we talk and then nothing would happen. So it definitely had imposter syndrome at the time. And then Patrick reached out, and my husband was kind of like, you should just go and see. I know what your experience has been, but just talk to him and see what happens. Because, it's even if you don't get the job at that point, maybe later on you get more experience, they'll see what you're doing or keep an eye on you, and then they'll come back. So when Patrick and I started talking, I just thought it was going to be easy, relaxed conversation, which probably helped me not be so nervous. And then as we went along, I just started getting more confidence. And then I realized, he explained what the company was about, what was, what they were looking for, the opportunities. And it was kind of during that moment that I was like, hey, this might be a better path instead of, staying with the company I was previously at. Because as much as I loved who I was working with, there were certain things I just wasn't getting out of it. So for me, it was really just at that moment, like, yeah, I really want to move to BombBomb, and I really need to move on. And like I said, I was only there at the other company for 9 months. So it just depends on where you are.
One of the reasons I started looking and switching, there was layoffs at my company, especially with COVID. So having like an insecurity at your current job, sometimes like, okay, it's might be time to go. So.
Thank you for answering that question. We have another question from Anna. What tips do you have for negotiating an equal salary? A few answers in the chat, but anyone have any tips?
I kind of looked at the jobs that I was going for, what was kind of the average, what they put on Glassdoor to try to figure that out. I also had a little assistance because at the time Lambda would help with that. But the one thing they always said is don't sell yourself short. See what's the average, see the experience level for that average, and then try to come up with an amount that you think might fit that job and your experience. I mean, it's kind of hard to do that, especially when it's your first job that you're actually looking at or whatever, but never sell yourself short. Like always realize that, especially as, it's hard to get into this career path, that you are worth more than what some people are willing to pay, and just go for it, and be confident in going for it, because otherwise you'll sell yourself short and not get what you are worth. And especially at some companies who aren't willing to pay the amount of the other companies in the area. If you don't feel like they are willing to pay you for what you're worth, then move on. There's other companies who are willing to pay you the full amount.
Thank you, Jade. So I have some experience with that. Like one of the recruiters shared with me that one of the female candidate didn't negotiate in full, so she lost almost 20K in her salary because that was company's maximum, and she didn't negotiate, so she lost it. So negotiate more. If companies have the room for giving you more, they'll accept your conditions. Otherwise, you will get whatever you ask for. So negotiate more. We have another question from Fatima. Do bootcamp graduates have more of an advantage over self-taught developers, or does it just depend on the skills they can demonstrate through projects and the interview process?
In terms of hiring, I think there's two benefits. One, if you went to a boot camp with a well-known name, in my case, Turing was the local boot camp in Denver. So a lot of the Denver tech companies knew the name. I think that was very helpful. But now I feel like in the world of remote, maybe it doesn't matter as much. I think obviously the most important thing is, can you demonstrate your skills? But I will say most boot camps, and Jade, you can speak to this too, because I know you're another boot camp grad. I found the biggest benefit to be the alumni network, where people are more likely to refer you to jobs. I think I said this earlier. In my experience, the hardest part of getting a job is just getting your application noticed. I feel like most of the time when you're actually in the interview, if you're prepared, hopefully will go well, but it's so easy to just be ignored. So that would be my biggest thing, is just the alumni network and the connections that come from going to an established school versus teaching yourself. But if you're a great networker, which I wasn't, maybe you can do the same thing. So maybe it doesn't matter.
Thank you, Liz. Anyone have any other tips? Okay, we have another question from Dom. Any hot tips for preparing for a technical interview? How long do you all usually study?
Having just gone through technical interviews myself, I studied probably close to 30 hours for a couple weeks, just preparing. I definitely hopped onto Udemy, grabbed a couple courses, just like having that experience of like somebody walking you through the usual questions that people are going to ask you, and like the usual data structures that they want to see you implement and work with is really useful. I have one that was like the JavaScript coding interviews, data algorithms and data structures, and it was really, really helpful. I think the biggest thing for me that I always struggle with is the non-coding questions, but the still technical questions, because there's such a wide range and you never quite know what they're going to pull and what they're going to ask. And like everybody has kind of slightly different language to talk about, some of this stuff, like, a promise versus, a catch, or, things like that. So that's really what I spent most of my time on. And that's just flashcards for me. So
I think a big thing too is don't be afraid to ask the recruiter what to expect on an interview. I still remember my conversation with Matt like a year and a half ago, and they were very upfront with what the interview process was at BombBomb. So I tailored my studying to that. And I feel like they don't do any like gotchas, which is good. I've been lucky to not have any interview in my development career where they're, throwing like super intense technical questions at you out of left field, because unfortunately, sometimes those interview questions that people pose like have nothing to do with your day-to-day job. So I frankly think it's a bit unfair.
Yeah, I interviewed with one of the bigger companies, and they did those like gotchas, and you go through like 4 rounds of interviews where like you're one-on-one and they're like voting on you, and at the end it can be a little bit rough. But
Thanks, Sharon and Liz, for sharing that. We have another question from Patrick. What's next along your path to coding?
Anyone? I can talk. Another thing I haven't had at my past few jobs, but we do have here, is something they call an engineering ladder. Something I felt was difficult at past jobs is you never really know, like, okay, how do I get to the next level? Some companies have senior, engineer 1, 2, 3, or junior, mid, senior. It's the first job I've been to where we have like an actual guidelines of, maybe quarterly, you can go through this spreadsheet with your manager and get scored on 4 different categories. And they kind of have a baseline of you need to score X amount of points to be considered a mid or senior. So for me, I know my score that I need to increase to get to senior is impact in the company. So that's like stuff of, doing work that is helping people across teams, that kind of thing. So I've been focused on that a lot the past few months, just trying to branch out amongst the different teams and not pigeonhole myself so much. And I personally am trying to go the technical route, at least for now. Maybe once I have more technical knowledge, get into management, but that would be way down the line.
Thank you, Liz. Another question from Ray. Ray is an upcoming student for a diploma in software development. Which language should I try to learn before starting school?
I try to learn before starting.
Which language Ray should try to learn before starting school?
I probably have a different take on this than anybody else, but my first language, even before I started programming, or I should say, I only learned 1 language before I got into my job, my internship, and the language I actually learned was VB6, which, if you know languages, VB6 is super outdated. Nobody uses it anymore, except for the one company that I got my internship at, and knowing VB6, building on that language into JavaScript, into now React, has been good. And I thought VB6 was easy to learn. So I think as long as you're learning something that you find easy and interesting, then you can build on that to anything else.
Absolutely. Yes, that is entirely true.
I kind of feel like once you learn one language, not to say that each language is the same, but there's some patterns that start to form between languages. Like I started off with JavaScript, and then we learned Python. And there are some patterns that you start to recognize that kind of get you in this mode of, okay, how is it best to learn JavaScript, and can I apply those to learning Python? And I was able to kind of switch over and kind of use some of the same tactics to make it easier. So the more you start going and getting in depth of one language, I just feel like you can just apply it as you move along and you start to grow in your knowledge.
Yeah, for me, I started with C++ and then moved into PHP. I still do PHP to this day, 15 years later. But it's totally true. Once you have kind of a foundational knowledge of one, type of language, then it's absolutely true what Sharon and Jade are saying.
I think in terms of what's easier to learn, I think JavaScript has a lot of breadth of knowledge and courses out there. So.
Thank you, Sharon, Jade, Erica, for sharing that knowledge. Another question from Rebecca. When starting a career, is it better to aim to position yourself as full stack, a little bit of everything, or deeper knowledge in one area, back end, front end?
I would suggest doing a full stack approach, unless you really, as you are learning more of a full stack, you begin to really enjoy more of the back end or the front end side. Then you can always, learn more about what you're enjoying. But starting as full stack is going to give you a lot more of an edge.
Yeah, I'd agree.
Yeah, we have a few more minutes, 3 more minutes. So anyone have any last minute questions? Okay, I don't see any questions. I do have a question that's specifically the interview process at BombBomb. How you all felt while interviewing for BombBomb? If you can share that with us.
I interviewed like quite a bit back when I was searching to switch careers, and I had a variety of different experiences. And the one thing that stuck out to me about the interview process at BombBomb is that they cared about me as a person, not just about my code. Because you can have a lot of different experiences interviewing, but a lot of people, when it comes down to it, they just want to see your code and they want to know that you know what you're doing, right? But not a lot of people go past that to like, okay, are you going to fit into our team well? Are you going to promote our culture? Are you going to be a good fit? And like, how can we also help you? And that was definitely a thing that I felt with the BombBomb interview.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I'm sure Matt can speak real in depth about it, but they follow the WHO method, which essentially is more focused on like, what did you learn and what could you have done better at your past jobs or projects, instead of like list off every accomplishment you had. It's more like, what are you most proud of? What's like a weakness you might have had. And I think, Matt, you might be able to touch on this, but I think the premise really is to get to the core of who you are as a person, more than like, what exactly do you know? Because I think that they know that anyone can learn the skill. It's more important. Are you a decent person?
Yeah, that definitely plays a factor. I mean, we want to see baseline skills for sure. That helps us kind of see where somebody might be able to come in at an experience level. But, more importantly, if not as important, is aptitude. How do you learn things? Engineering is a really cool discipline in the sense that it's always something new to learn. And so we really look for people who, one, can maybe talk about how they learn things and then are excited about that, because that's very much a part of the job. Definitely want to know about people, as a person. I think we do well to individualize people and not treat people as numbers. And that, I think, sounds like it comes through in our interviews. So I'm pleased to hear that. And then, yeah, just really focusing on kind of being the other path of the street, right? Being open to questions, being very transparent about the company and the work you might get into. It's very much a two-way interview where, I don't know, we want to be as open and transparent about that stuff as well. So I'm encouraged to hear people have had a good experience with it.
I think we have a junior position open right now. I don't actually remember, but.
Yeah, Fatima asked that what's the complete interview process at BombBomb, and do you post junior positions?
Yeah, so I don't think we currently do have a junior role.
It was product design, sorry.
Oh yeah. It was earlier this year, we did have a junior position on one of our RevOps teams, but we do from time to time. I think we tend to hire more mid to senior level, but we definitely do hire juniors. The interview process is fairly straightforward. I think we want to be respectful of people's times, not drag things out. And we don't do any like take home projects or assignments. I don't find it to be too successful to ask people to do coding work on their own time for an interview. I know a lot of companies do that. It's not something that we do. It's really like a call with, one of our recruiters, me or my partner in recruiting, would be typically after that, a conversation with Patrick, who's our CTO. I'm not an engineer, so I don't go too deep on tech stuff. And that's really where Patrick comes in. And then we would do a longer form interview with the actual team we would consider you on. So that's meeting with other engineers, the deeper dive into your work experience. Sometimes there's another interview beyond that, but generally speaking, we can make a decision at that point. So it's fairly straightforward. And yes, we do absolutely respond to all applications. We do our best to provide feedback to what we can, but that's something I really focus on, at least. The way I think about it is like, even if we don't hire you, I want you to still want to work at BombBomb. I want your experience to be such that you would still apply again. So we definitely do our best in that regard.
Thank you, Matt, for sharing that. Any more questions from our audience? Okay, I don't think we have more questions, and we are past our time. So thank you for asking all those questions. And thank you everyone at BombBomb to answer those questions and give us the insight into what's BombBomb's work culture, product, and how you evaluate candidates, and what's your hiring strategy and process. Thank you everyone joining tonight. We have more events at Women Who Code Boulder, Denver, and also like Women Who Code as a global organizations. Our chapters are doing a variety of events. We do have a conference coming in June, so check that out in our website, womenwhocode.com. And we'll all see you in our next event. Thank you all for joining, and let me